He sets the table the way she loved it. The good plates, the candle in the center, the wine glass on the left because she is left-handed, and he memorized that in the first week, back when memorizing her was the most important project of his life. She sits down, looks at the table. There is something in her face, just for a second, that he does not catch. A softness, almost like grief, like someone recognizing a photograph of a place they used to live and realizing they feel nothing but the faint echo of who they were when they lived there. He doesn't see it. He is already reaching for the wine. There is a version of someone you carry around inside you. Most people call it love. Here is the truth. Sometimes it is something more dangerous than love. Sometimes it is a memorial. You met her. She laughed a certain way, held her coffee in both hands, cared about specific things with a specific intensity that felt like watching someone on fire and realizing you had been cold your entire life. And somewhere in that first year, without knowing you were doing it, you made a picture. Not a memory, a picture. You framed it, hung it somewhere permanent inside you. And every year since, you have been walking up to that frame and saying, "This is who she is. This is who I love." And every year, she has been somewhere else entirely, becoming someone quietly, without announcement, the way living things grow, not in moments you can point to, but in the small, continuous movements of a person who is actually living her life. The problem is not that she changed. Everyone changes. The problem is that you kept loving someone who no longer exists, and somewhere in her nervous system, she registered the shape of it. She felt the place where your attention should have landed and didn't. She felt the outline of your assumption pressing against her like a mold she was slowly outgrowing, and she learned to live inside the gap. Think about the last time you were genuinely surprised by her. Not by something she did wrong, surprised, the way you were surprised in the beginning, when her opinion on something stopped you cold because you had not anticipated it, when she moved through a room and you thought, "I do not fully know this person yet," when she said something that made you realize there was more to explore than you had the capacity to hold. When was that? A year ago? 2? 5? What happened was not that she became less interesting. She became more particular, more layered, more distinct from the woman you first met, not because she left that woman behind, but because she grew continuously past her, the way a river doesn't stay where it started. She has been growing for every year of your relationship. New things she cares about, new positions on old questions, a depth that has been building in the quiet of every morning you assumed you already understood. And you have been missing all of it. Not because you stopped loving her, because you already decided who she was. Your psychological pattern had filed her, put her in a category, assigned her a set of preferences, reactions, opinions, and every time reality offered you a correction, your mind smoothed it over, kept the picture intact. That is not love. That is maintenance. That is a man touching up the paint on a portrait and calling the work devotion. She says something at dinner, a small thing, a new position on something you have discussed 100 times. You laugh, offer the familiar response, the one she used to love. She smiles, moves on. You don't track the move. You never track the move. But her emotional gravity has been shifting for longer than you know, and she has learned not to expect you to notice. She has learned to become quietly. because every time she offered you something new about herself, you received it warmly and then responded to the version of her you already had on file. So she stopped offering, and you called it comfortable, and she called it alone. Here is what actually happens at the dinner table. He reaches for her hand, the way he always does, sure, practiced, tender with the tenderness of repetition. She takes it. She does not pull away. She takes it, but differently. You would have to be watching, really watching, to notice. The angle of her fingers, the slight delay before the close. It is not coldness. It is not distance. It is the hand of a person who is fully present, but not the person he has been rehearsing this gesture for. And somewhere below the level of his words, something in him notices it. He cannot name it yet, but his chest registers it, the way a room registers a shift in pressure before anyone can feel the wind coming. Let me explain what is actually happening inside him in this moment. He is not just failing to see her, he is failing to see himself. Because the version of her he preserved, the one in the frame, that version required a specific version of him to love her. The man he was in year one, alert, curious, slightly unsteady, willing to be changed by someone. He stopped being that man because he stopped needing to be. He had the picture. The picture never challenged him. The picture never woke up differently than he expected. The picture never grew past what he could contain. The real her did, every single year. And every year he chose the frame. The realization does not arrive like a revelation. It arrives like a weight being set down after carrying it so long you stopped knowing it was there. He looks at her across the table, really looks, without the overlay of what he expects to find. And for the first time in years, he doesn't already know what she is thinking. He has no filing for this moment, no prepared response. She is suddenly someone he has not fully met. And this is terrifying. And underneath the terror, something he had forgotten was still in him. Curiosity. The real kind, the kind that existed before certainty, before comfort, before the photograph. The kind that is willing to be wrong about who someone is, completely, humiliatingly wrong, in order to find out who they actually are. Love without attention becomes archaeology. You dig up what you remember, dust it off, call it knowing someone. But the person is standing in front of you, present, evolved, holding more than you have ever asked about, and you have been reading the exhibit notes instead of speaking to the living thing. The attachment between two people does not break when one person changes. It breaks when the other person refuses to. He asks a question, not the usual question, not the one she has answered 100 times in exactly the way he anticipates. Something new, something he genuinely does not know. She looks up, not with suspicion, with something slower and more careful than that. The look of someone who has been waiting, without admitting they were waiting, to find out if you would ever come looking for the person they had become. Most men spend years loving a feeling they once had. They protect it, maintain it, build a life around keeping it exactly as it was. They call the protection devotion, but devotion is not backward-facing. Devotion does not preserve. Devotion moves with someone. It says, "Show me who you are today." It says, "I do not already know." It says, "I am still curious about you," and means it not as a gift, but as the only true thing remaining. The version of her he preserved was real. She existed. She loved him. She was extraordinary. But she grew.
And the question that remains at the end of the table, between the good plates and the candle and the wine glass placed on the left side still after all these years, is not whether she will wait for him to catch up. She may be already too far down the road. The question is whether he will put the photograph down, not to lose what it held, but to open his hands and discover if it is not too late whoever is sitting across from him tonight, for the first time, as if it were still